Welcome back. It is podcast day once again.
Yes.
Today we are sticking with To Kill a Mockingbird because that's the book we're reading. It is also the graphic novel bit. And oh my. We're at the court case, baby.
At the court case.
It's the court case.
Okay.
And oh Nelly, was it stressful?
Yeah.
So it starts off. Oh God, I don't remember what it starts off. I think it literally starts off when they're walking into the courtroom.
Okay.
They've got the dude who's outside, who's sitting purposefully with
in the black people section.
And Scout and Jem. They're like, Dad, why is he sitting over there? And he's like,
because he wants to.
He would rather sit with them than us. And Jem is like talking to Scout and Dill, because Dill's like third wheel extraordinaire.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Dill is kind of like getting not uppity. I'm talking old timey today. Dill and Jem have become very good friends, so Scout's kind of like a third wheel because she's the youngest.
Yeah.
But, Dill and Scout, they're sitting there, and Jem is like, see the guy sitting with everyone in the black people section? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, look, he's drinking something out of a brown paper bag. And they're like, oh, what's that? And Jem is like, he's drinking whiskey out of a Coca-Cola bottle.
Yeah.
How could he?
So unobvious.
Mm-hmm. But this guy is like, he owns like half the river that the town is on, so he's like very wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And the town thinks that he's in like the grips of alcoholism, and that's the reason why he's like, I can't think of a better word, and this is kind of appropriate for what we're thinking of. Slumming it with all like, slumming it and sitting in the black people section. Mm-hmm. So they're like, oh, if he was in his right mind, he wouldn't make that decision. Oh, this poor man, what a way to live his life.
And he's just like,
And then they talk to him after, because the court case gets too heavy, and we're going to get back to the court case, but I like this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Court case gets too heated, and they go outside. And Dill and Scout go over to the guy, because he's sitting outside next to a tree. And he offers Dill a sip from his bottle. And Scout's like, no, Dill, it's whiskey! And he takes a sip of it, and he's like, oh, it's just Coca-Cola. What? But people think you're drinking alcohol. Why haven't you told them that you're not? And he's like, it's just easier for people to justify what I'm doing that way. And Scout is like baffled. She's like, I've never had someone lie to me for a good reason before. Like, she's like, I've never had anyone lie about themselves to make themselves look worse.
Yeah.
And she like can't fathom it.
Yeah, well, she's also like, what, 6?
Mm-hmm.
She's like 8 at
I think
this point,
yeah.
I think.
But she's like, what? People think that you're in like the grips of whiskey. It's just Coca-Cola. Why don't you correct them? He's like, it's just easier for them that way. And she just doesn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really where the perspective comes into play in the story. Just like, if it was Scout as an adult, and she found out that it was just Coke, she'd be like, oh. But as a kid, she's like, why are you lying to make yourself look bad? Mr. Whatever your name is, how could you? So that's a nice little tidbit. Back to the court case.
Back to the depressing court case.
Order in the court.
Order in the court.
It's Tom Robinson. I always get his name wrong.
Is it Tom Robinson?
I think it's Tom.
I think it's Tom Robinson because I remember it from the show I told you about. Mm-hmm. And that guy's name is Tim Robinson.
Okay.
And I kept thinking of it like Tom
Okay.
Anyways, that
Tom
is completely
Robinson
unrelated.
being defended by Atticus Finch is the defendant. No, he's the Yeah, he's the defendant.
Yeah.
And the random hick guy is the prosecutor.
What's his name?
I don't remember their last name.
I forget it as well. I know it's Mayella. That's the girl.
Yeah.
The girl's name is Mayella.
I'm gonna call her Trump, because that sounds stupid and fun, and for other reasons.
Yeah.
So we're gonna call her Mayella Trump.
Okay, that's really not her name.
I know.
You know I can just look it up, right?
It's fine. So, it's the Trumps. They're the prosecutors, and Tom, he's in court for allegedly raping a white woman. Mayella Trump. So I'm just going with it.
Okay.
So they get Miss Trump up to the stand, and the prosecuting attorney starts like asking her questions, and he's like, "Oh, what happened?" And she's like, "Oh, I called Mr. Tom Robinson into my house because he walks by to bust off a chifforobe, just a fancy dresser."
Yeah.
And then when I went to pay him a nickel, he attacked me and started trying to rape me, and then he did. But then my dad came back, and he was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And then Tom ran away, and he gave me a black eye and strangled me around the throat. That wasn't what she said. Someone else said that. It was the sheriff, I think. Mm-hmm. But then Atticus gets up there, and he starts going on this girl. But, like, she hates him because he's a good lawyer, and she's in the wrong here, but we don't know that yet.
I mean, I think we could have picked it up.
But she also doesn't like him because he's, like, the oddball in the town, and they're, like, the mean hicks. But he starts asking her, like, very benign, seemingly, questions, like, "How many siblings do you have? What do you do on Sundays? Like, what's your family's income?" And it starts, like, painting a picture for the jury of, like, oh, she has a bad home life, and her father is addicted to alcohol. Oh my God, special guest Peter, he's here.
Peter.
Oh, we're doing this again?
It's the podcast, Peter. We're in the court case.
To kill him off.
I don't remember the girl's name, so we're calling her Mayella Trump.
Her name's actually Mayella. The Trump is a lie.
I think it's Mayella Ewell.
Yeah, it's the Ewells.
Ewells.
It's
Damn
the
it.
Ewells.
We're sticking with Trump.
Okay, continuity.
Continuity must remain the same. So, Miss Mayella Trump Ewell, she's kind of cracking under pressure once Atticus starts asking the real hard-hitting questions, like doing a cross-examination and checking her facts and saying, like, "Is what you said true?" And she's like, "Yes." And he's kind of, like, suspicious of her for good reason. But then, through Atticus's insightful court expertise, we find out that it probably wasn't Tom Robinson who did the old smackaroony to Mayella Trump. It was probably Mayella Trump's father,
Mr. Trump.
Mr. Trump
Mr.
Ewell.
Von Trump.
Mr. Von Trump.
I'm thinking of this as the Von Trumps.
Oh my God.
You know.
So, Mr. Von Trump, and pardon my language, dear one viewer, is a huge asshole.
Yeah, no crap.
No, so he's like the worst.
Yeah, he's not great.
And he's like, not, Atticus is like accusing, he's talking to this girl, who's 19 by the way, and he's like, "Where were all these kids when, where were all those 9 siblings you had when, this abuse was happening?" And she like doesn't answer, and then he's like, "Be honest with me, Miss Trump. Did your father do this to you?" And she's like totally silent. But then
As her father is staring at her from
her
the
father
outside.
looks like he's gonna explode. Like his face is like red, and he looks like he's gonna kill someone.
He probably would if he had the chance.
Yeah. But she's like, how dare you ask me these questions? Blah, 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 blah.
I'm a white girl.
I'm the victim here. Blah, 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 blah.
I have white privilege. Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 blah. And so Atticus's thing falls apart. She, like, didn't answer the question right. But, then, our good friend, our unfortunate good friend, Tom Robinson, takes the stand. And we find out that his arm, I think it was his left arm is
Like mangled.
it's mangled. He was crippled from a young age, I think the book was.
Yeah, it was an accident.
I think his hand he got stuck in like a cotton mill or something.
Yeah.
He got his arm caught, so his arm is like useless. Again, when the graphic novel comes into play, his arm is just like it's like a long raisin.
Yeah, I don't know what forget what the movie said about this. I think his hand was just like bandaged.
Okay. His arm looks
remember.
like a long raisin in the graphic novel. But they start asking him questions, and then we find out that Atticus may have been right, but it will never be admitted to. The Trump girl was not right, but in fact, Tom Robinson busted up that chifforobe like a year ago, and instead, it was Miss Ewell Trump who made moves on Mr. Tom Robinson.
Gasp.
I'm gonna pause this. We might come back to it in a second. Hello. We are briefly resuming the podcast.
It smells really bad.
It really does. So, to wrap up this court case, actually, I think I read further than the thing. I think the court case ends after the reading section.
Yeah.
But, spoiler alert, they find Tom guilty. It was kind of inevitable. But they did a good job. And in the end, it's not what matters. We wanted him to be free. But we'll find out Tom's unfortunate fate.
Do you know his unfortunate?
Yeah. On the next episode of the podcast. See you next time.
See you later on the Dippy Fresh podcast.
See you later on the Dippy Fresh podcast. I've been your host.
I've been your co-host.
Ruby Go.
I've been your
Keep on keeping on.
keep on.